17 minutes past 7.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Jeff Dudas from underwatertimes.com.
Yes, indeed, underwatertimes.com. Jeff Dudas joining us in Miami. Hello to you, Jeff.
Hey, Wammo, how you doing?
Very well, very well. What is the latest situation with the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico? Because that's not that very far away from you, is it?
It's not too far. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I flew over it. I took a plane ride across the Gulf and got to see it from the air.
What does it look like from the air?
It's pretty strange. I mean, there are a bunch of ships down there, and you could see the main ship that's taking on all the oil right now. And they were flaring off some of the oil, and there's a bunch of ships and a bunch of activity going around it. And you could actually, you could see the sheen of oil coming off. So it's quite a sight and a lot of activity going on out there.
And does that sheen and the patches of that sheen, does that stretch as far as you can see?
Pretty much so. I mean, it's a pretty sad situation going out there. But you could definitely see oil on the water going off for miles. With the current.
And where you currently live, I mean, you're a few minutes drive from the beach.
I'm on the Atlantic coast, so where the oil has actually come up on Florida is on the Gulf Coast, and it's way up north. So it's sort of on the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico where oil has come up.
So are you off the hook where you are there?
It looks like actually we've been quite lucky, and I think Florida in general has been quite lucky. It's only in a relatively small stretch on the very far north of the state that it's gotten hit. But what's really gotten hit is actually Louisiana. That's fared the worst, which is in a close proximity to the well. So they've actually done. There's a lot of oil coming ashore there, and it's very. The shoreline, it's not really beach there. It's sort of mangrove and swamp and such and marsh. And so when it washes up there and collects there, you can't really just, as you could along a beach, just sort of drive a truck down or such and get to it. I mean, you really have to go through sort of weeds and goo to get to the oil, and it's just, it doesn't make for an easy cleanup.
Is it that classic mangrove kind of reedy wildness that we saw in the old Flipper show?
Like that. I mean, it's the sort of marshy land, so it doesn't make for easy cleanup. So there's going to be a long time before that'll get cleaned up, and of course, that's the one factor is the oil's still gushing out, and I think maybe with a couple of relief wells that'll come on in August, perhaps that's when you can really talk about capping this thing off and stopping the oil from coming up.
Exactly. All right. Well, we'll get another update from you in 2 weeks on that one, but we'll get on to one of our stories here about a man who's managed to be reunited with his camera.
Yeah, this was a diver off the island of Aruba, which is in the Caribbean. Is essentially off the coast of Venezuela. So it's pretty. It's one side of the Caribbean. He was going out. Had one of these video cameras that you put in a case. So he was going out to film a scuba dive, and along the scuba dive, he lost his camera. It sort of floated away from him. Didn't realize it, and thought he would never see it again. And so that was sort of the first part of the story. And 6 months later, in Key West, Florida, which is in the very bottom of Florida, a Coast Guard serviceman spotted something red on the shore up against the rocks. He thought it was a rotten tomato. Went and looked at it closer, and it was the same camera.
Huh.
But no idea that it had been lost 6 months before, or 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
So it floated across. He picked up this camera, started looking at it, opened it up, and started playing a video. He could see a video. He could see some land shots and some people in the shots. He could see an island, but knew nothing else about it. So he decided to post this video on a scuba website, and some divers recognized it as Aruba. And so the next step is they posted it on a couple sites in Aruba and sort of cruise websites. And somebody, sure enough, recognized some of the kids that were taking pictures of, and they contacted someone else, and so they got back to the original guy, and they started looking at this video again. And the other strange thing about it is they noticed that all of a sudden the video turned on underwater, and it was following sort of underwater, and they figured out that a turtle had picked up this camera and flipped it on and took like a 5-minute video.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
And they posted the video on YouTube. I think as of a week or so ago, it had been seen 760,000 times.
Wow.
So it's a big hit on YouTube that this the turtle directed video.
Yeah, the turtle sounds like it's got a future in
So,
underwater video. Yeah,
a string of coincidences along the way, and there you go.
Absolutely. All right. What about seal whiskers? Apparently, quite useful.
Yeah, I've heard these old stories about cat whiskers and how important they are, and evidently, seal whiskers are very important for finding fish. And I guess it's a seal's job is to eat. They've done a pretty good job. This is out of Cologne. These researchers were trying to figure out, how do seals hunt, and do they actually use their whiskers? And so they took this seal, and they had this special get-up where they would blindfold the seal and put these sort of headphones over their ears so they couldn't use their eyes or their ears to track, only their whiskers. And they made up this artificial fish with kind of a rubberized tail on a stick, and they put this seal in this cage, and we're playing with this fish in front of it. And sure enough, they figured out that the seal, they would move the fish, artificial fish, in a certain direction, and the seal would turn its head in that direction, and they would move it in another direction, and the seal would turn its head in that direction. So they figured out just with this whiskers and sort of following the trails in the in the ocean that this artificial fish leaves, that the seal is able to track fish.
I
think they said it was up to 100 meters away it could determine and track a fish, which if you think about it in the ocean, 100 meters away with all the currents and stuff, pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I was thinking, well, by the time that's got back to the seal, the fish could be heading another direction, but that doesn't really matter because it's just following the path, isn't
so
it?
it just follows this path,
Yeah.
and evidently it said up to 30 seconds after, the fish makes a movement, it can still track, the seal can still track it. So it's, with these whiskers, pretty darn sensitive. And they started testing other things, so they said, with different shapes and such, the seal could track those too. So they think maybe the seal, just by looking at the trail or sensing the trail, can track different types of fish and know, say this may be a, maybe a mackerel or herring, and this may be a tuna or something. So it may be able to figure out, quite a lot just from its whiskers and what it can sense with the trail of the fish.
And Jeff, talking about being very sensitive, sharks have well known to be sensitive to the smell of blood in water.
Right, and there's another one of these stories when there's always a shark can sense like a drop of blood in the ocean and can track you down and such. Well, they figured out that hey, that might be true, and these are researchers in Florida figured this out. They were testing with sharks, and they hooked up this special tank. And they put these 2 tubes down, or 1 tube down each nostril, and they would put a little bit of squid in one or the other, and they would figure out how the shark would react to that. And they figured out, among other things, that this sort of incredible smell-o-vision sharks have. They call it stereo, or smell stereo.
Yeah.
And what they figured out is that the way sharks hunt with blood and other things is that they measure the lag and from when the odor actually hits an individual nostril, and so it's very, very sensitive. Up to a tenth of a second, they can figure out the difference, and from that difference is they'll move to the direction of where the smell first hits, either their left or right nostril, and that's how they're able to track you or track a scent in the water. Which refutes the old idea where it was just concentration. So you would have like say something in the ocean that was letting out blood, say a fish that was cut, and they would just go to the higher concentration. That doesn't work. They've tried that before with models and robots and stuff just to hone in on a concentration. It was never good enough, so they figured out finally, hey, it's this difference in smell that they actually turn toward. And if they would get sort of a similar signal or, no signal, they would just turn left or right to sort of reacquire. But once they had that signal and they could figure out the differences, they always went to the higher concentration, and that's how it works.
Smart animals, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Jeff Dudas, thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Cheers. Those stories you can find on underwatertimes.com and a whole lot more there as well. Jeff Dudas joining us from